Evening. Police arrested more than 50 people in a sweeping crackdown on pro-democracy figures in the city for allegedly violating the national security law. They are accused of subversion over election primaries they held last year for the Legislative Council. Authorities say the unofficial vote was part of a bigger plan aimed at paralyzing the government and the entire society. Haley Zhou begins our coverage.
因為依家你咧涉嫌咧就違反國安法。
You were suspected of being involved in an act of subversion in violation of the national security law. This morning, police rounded up 53 pan-Democrats over the pro-democracy camp's primaries held last July. It's the latest and the largest wave of arrests of pro-democracy figures under the national security law, which is rapidly changing the political climate in Hong Kong. Held only months after the anti-government protests ended, the primaries received an overwhelming response. More than 600,000 Hong Kongers turned up to cast their votes, which prompted Chief Executive Carrie Lam to give this warning.
If this so-called primary election's purpose is to achieve the ultimate goal of delivering what they call a 35+, with the objective of objecting to, resisting every policy initiative of the Hong Kong SAR government, then it may fall into the category of subverting the state power.
The actual election didn't happen last year after the government pushed it back a year, citing infection risks amid the pandemic. Security Chief John Lee says the primaries were part of a mutual destruction scheme, justifying the sweeping crackdown.
The operation today targets the active elements who are suspected to have been involved in the crime of overthrowing or interfering, seriously destroy the Hong Kong government's legal execution of duties. They have a 10-step mutual destruction plan in which they will be mobilizing mass-scale riots in streets, together with other actions to in some way paralyze society.
Police say people who voted in the primaries are not their target.
In the March, they will start with some idea. And in April, it turned out to become 10-step. And in September, they actually work out something to do, including the crowdfundings, including holding a so-called primaries, is subversive for their own behaviors.
The arrestees include Occupy leader and former law professor Benny Tai, who organized the primaries, former lawmakers as well as district councillors. The police also raided the home of Joshua Wong, a prominent democracy activist who is in jail for unauthorized assembly charges over the 2019 protests. The national security law came into force around half a year ago and has been hailed by authorities as having brought peace and stability to Hong Kong. So far, more than 80 people have been arrested under the law. Haley Zhou, TVB News.
The national security crackdown also extended to media groups and others who helped organize the election primaries. While more arrests could come, police say those who voted in the unofficial polls will be spared. Kina Chu tells us more.
Deploying 1,000 officers to 72 locations, police left the Hong Kong Public Opinion Research Institute this afternoon with boxes of evidence. During the pan-Democrats primaries last year, the polling organization provided their platform and gave technical support to the organizers.
The government intention is quite clear. It's trying to make people sign up and to keep people from saying anything against the government will.
Its Deputy Executive Director Chung Kim-wah reassured the more than 600,000 voters in the unofficial polls that their personal data is safe.
So after a few days to the conclusion of the primary, all hard disks and CD-ROMs, etc., have been damaged. Nothing is left for the government to do something on those who come out to vote.
Officers also descended on the headquarters of 3 pro-democracy news outlets, Stan News, Apple Daily, and Hong Kong and Media. Stan News and Apple Daily in particular held candidate forums ahead of the primaries. With a court order, authorities demanded they turn over essential documents for investigation.
The production order was signed by the High Court judge, And what I cannot discuss precisely what material we required from the media, but I can confirm that all the information we required is not involving the journalistic material. It's just for investigation, some connection between the plan and the institutes involved.
According to Lee, organizers handed out cash ranging from $4,000 to $290,000 to participants. The national security dragnet was also cast on former Democratic Party Chairman Alba Ho's law firm Ho Tse-Wai and Partners. There, police arrested American human rights lawyer John Clancy. The Power for Democracy treasurer served as Kai's secretariat for the primaries. Kana Chu, TVB News.
The arrests are stirring controversy both in and outside the city. As Dong Yang reports, the argument rests over whether the pan-democratic camp's primary can be considered an act of subversion under the national security law.
Tonight, fresh disputes over what constitutes a national security offense following the high-profile arrest of organizers and candidates of last year's Democratic primaries. Police justified the arrest, citing subversion offenses under the national security law. Article 22 of the legislation states that anyone who organizes, plans, commits, or participates in subversion acts by force, threat of force, or other unlawful means is criminal. Those include acts that overthrow the body of power of the SAR or seriously interfere or disrupt its performance of duties and functions. But a senior counsel and executive council member says 3 core elements have to be proved to carry out such prosecutions.
There must be some planning, organization. The activity must be illegal or enforce the use of force. And the aim is to seriously undermine and disrupt the functioning of the SAR government. If any one of those elements is not present, then you cannot be said to have acted contrary to the national security law.
The Pan-Democrats blasted authorities for violating the rights of legislators to vote and veto budgets.
These are rights promised to us and enshrined in the Basic Law. These provisions guarantee the power of the legislature to scrutinize the executive, and also vice versa.
But pro-establishment members say lawmakers' duties shouldn't be confused with acts that paralyze LegCo.
We do not have the mens rea, that is to overthrow the powers of the Hong Kong SAR, which is different from those who participated in the primaries.
Taipei expressed its shock and discontent. Beijing, meanwhile, welcomed the arrests. Dong Yang, TVB News.
The European Union has called for the immediate release of the 53 arrested activists. An EU spokesman said the swoop shows political pluralism is no longer tolerated in Hong Kong and that the security law is being used to crush dissent and curb political freedoms. The bloc is not ruling out the possibility of sanctioning Beijing. That's despite sealing a business investment deal with China just days ago.